I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. We have a great episode for you today, folks. I just want to tell you, though, I'm pretty optimistic about the future. I think you kind of have to be, right? I have 4 kids. In order to have 4 kids, you have to believe that there is a future for the country. And in order to start a business, I recently launched Juno News with my co-founder and friend, Kian Bexty. And I think in order to do those kind of things, you have to generally be optimistic for the country, for the future, Canada's future. I'm not one of those people who thinks that the country is finished and that there won't be a Canada in a few years or a few decades. However, I think that optimism is sometimes challenged by the political orthodoxy in Canada, right? When you go out there and you talk to your friends, your family, everyday people, you realize that the pendulum has swung away from the worst excesses of the woke ideology. It was like it kind of peaked in 2022, maybe 23, and then it started to swing back. Actually, it started to swing back right around the time of the trucker convoys, a little hat tip to those brave people who challenged the Trudeau government and helped bring them down. But that common sense, that swinging of the pendulum back to common sense, it doesn't seem like it has reached the tops of our institutions, the sort of elite opinion makers and leaders of various institutions. They still seem to be very captured by the woke ideology and the insanity of it. So sometimes when you're scrolling social media, when you're reading through Juno News, you just have to stop and shake your head at how totally deranged some of the news stories out there are. I'll start with Melanie Bennett from True North, had an unbelievable exclusive report this week. We're going to talk about it more in depth a little later on. But just the overview, exclusive. New ethics code tells nurses to denounce white European medicine. Yes, Canadian nurses have to denounce white European medicine as somehow being racist or somehow being wrong. Regulated Canadian nurses are required to align their conduct with a detailed set of political values, among them social justice, gender ideology, Indigenous ways of knowing, and climate activism. The exact topics that I'm saying that the pendulum has swung back towards common sense, back towards being normal on. And yet, nurses in this country are being made to sworn allegiance to the most insane woke ideas. And it's not just that story. I think a big driver of this, folks, is the state broadcaster and the CBC. They seem to be just digging in their heels and doubling down on the woke insanity. Here's another story we're going to talk about. CBC pushes for boys in girls' sports. The headline there says, girls softball was an inclusive sport in Alberta. For this teen, a new law could end that. And so somehow that mean Premier Danielle Smith, how dare she stop this boy, this biological boy, from being able to play competitive sports against girls, right? It's completely backwards. It's completely upside down. And even when you read that story, it's like so confusing. It's written in such a weird language that just makes you not really even understand the facts of the story, but it's written in the woke ideological language that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Next story I want to talk about is going to be Parks Canada, which has revoked the permit for a Christian musicians concert. Permit revoked for a MAGA musicians concert at Parks Canada. What makes him MAGA again? Oh, he's a Christian from the United States, and therefore he must have MAGA views, and we have to be scared of him. And you can't even play a song and play a concert in Canada unless you have the approved views, apparently, of the woke leftist elites. It is so unbelievable. Final one here. This is just so ridiculous. It's like groupthink run amok. A man was removed from a WestJet flight for wearing a Trudeau blackface shirt. So that's an exclusive from us at the Juno News. A man was wearing a blackface shirt, making fun of our idiot former prime minister. And apparently that's what, like hate speech? You're not allowed to have freedom of expression in Canada. I don't think that these are mainstream values. I think that these are extreme, insane, deranged values that just happen to be held by a handful of people who have too much power and too much control in our country. And that's why part of what we do is exposing these people and showing everybody else just how totally insane they are, hopefully to pressure them to stop being so totally insane. And I'm excited to have a new guest. I'm sure I've never had her on before, but she's one of the culture warriors that is helping in our movement to push back against these woke excesses. I'm talking about Amy Eileen Hamm. She's a registered nurse, a freelance writer, and activist, and she has an interesting story of her own cancellation. So, Amy, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you join our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, okay, so I'm reading your bio, and I have this story from the JCCF in front of me. Nurse files complaint against the Vancouver Coastal Health, BC Colleges of Nurses and Midwives for political discrimination. So, Amy, for folks who might not be up to speed and aware of your background, your work, why don't you tell us your story and how you ended up here?
Sure. I've been engaged in lawfare now for almost 5 years related to my advocacy for women's sex based rights and for free speech. So, this is something that I was writing about and talking about outside of work for my day job as a registered nurse. Gender activists were very angry with what I was doing. They started complaining to my regulator and to my employer. This was back in 2020 when it started after I was involved in putting up an I Heart JK Rowling billboard in Vancouver. That's when the complaint started. It never stopped. And I was put under investigation. I ended up going through a 22-day disciplinary hearing. I was found guilty of unprofessional conduct, um, basically for saying that males can't become females and that trans women are biological males. After I was found guilty, I was fired from my job of 13 years with Vancouver Coastal Health, also over my political views that were only expressed outside of work. And so, like you mentioned, the JCCF article, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms has been representing me this whole time. And so we have an appeal of my guilty verdict with the BC College of Nurses. And we've also launched two human rights tribunal complaints, one against Vancouver Coastal Health and one against the College of Nurses on the basis of discrimination for political belief.
It's one of those funny things that if you're on the political left, you can be as political as you want, and you can wear crazy buttons and you can put up signs at work. And I've seen them at healthcare facilities in Canada, um, openly very politicized slogans from the left. But if you have mild, not even like right political opinions, but just non-woke, like you could even be on the political left, but you're just not fully on board with all of their orthodoxy, you get reprimanded. And it always reminds me, like, the liberals and the left, they love to say diversity is our strength, and like they love to like tout diversity. But when it comes to like any form of intellectual diversity, they just absolutely hate it. Or even heck, like what's the problem with having a Christian rock singer go play at a park in Nova Scotia? If people like his music, they want to pay for him. Great. Like we are a free society. And yet, because of like some innocuous social media post that he put that showed some support towards President Trump, he's not allowed in Canada. Like, how is Canada even a free country at this point?
It's very concerning, the utter lack of respect that Canadians seem to have for our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They don't seem to understand that if you don't constantly remain vigilant and fight for our rights, including our right to free expression, that our society can very quickly turn on a dark path. And it's worrying that that is where Canada is going. And this canceled concert, well, it was canceled at a Parks Canada site, and apparently it's rebooked in rural Nova Scotia at another site. But it's very bizarre. Nobody was forcing anybody, any Nova Scotian, to attend this concert with a Christian rock musician. And yet, the level of hysteria that people showed just for the fact that he was going to show up and sing some songs was just off the charts. It's frankly embarrassing to be Canadian when you see things like this happening regularly.
Well, it's totally right. It's totally in contradiction to our charter and to the values that they proclaim they believe. So CBC's reporting permit revoked for MAGA musicians, concert Parks Canada sites. Park Canada says a U.S. singer and rising star in the MAGA movement will not perform at a National Historic site near Halifax after the federal agency revoked the organizer's permit. Christian rocker Sean Foyt was scheduled to play a concert on Wednesday night at the York Redoubt National Historic Site, a fortification constructed in 1793. Foyt, who unsuccessfully ran for the U.S. Congress as a Republican 2020, is also a missionary, an author who has spoken out against the 2S LGBTQ plus community, abortion rights, and critical race theory on his website. So you cannot have the wrong views, and if you do, you cannot play Christian music. Well, Foyt was defiant, and he put out a video saying, "You know what? We're still going to play. We're rising up, and we're going to rise above this." And there he is. I won't play it because it's got some loud music in the background. But he's saying, he's got a happy, optimistic message and saying, they're trying to stop us. They don't want Christians. They don't like our values. But that's the opportunity for us to show up even louder and prouder and continue. So I salute his spirit, and I think that it's great that he's going to continue to push off. But I completely echo your sentiment that it's embarrassing for Canada. And I saw that you had a piece about this in the National Post. No MAGA beliefs allowed at Parks Canada historic site. Could you just imagine if they were politicizing this the other way around? Like if Pierre Poilievre was prime minister and he said, "Oh, sorry, you can't have like an LGBT band play." Like, I mean, it would be outrageous, and I would oppose that. But of course, people on the left just don't seem to care. They're actually like nodding along, saying like, "Yeah, good. We shouldn't have any MAGA singers allowed in Canada."
It's wild, and even the Liberal member of Parliament for Nova Scotia, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she was emailing constituents who were complaining about this concert, and an email that was shown to the CBC where she was saying, oh, I stand up for free speech, but there's diversity, equity, inclusion, and this needs to be upheld at Parks Canada sites. So I don't think this woman understands what she's saying when she uses the words free speech, because that includes that you need to be listening to people even if you don't like what they're going to say, or if you think you're not going to like what they're going to say. That's a very basic principle of free speech, is that you might be offended, and that's kind of the point.
Right. And also just the idea of diversity. Like, if you want true diversity, you have to have people that you don't necessarily like or agree with. Like, you said that his music is not necessarily your cup of tea. I'm not personally into Christian rock, but I think it's great that he goes out there and does that and inspires people. And I don't understand why that is upsetting to anyone else. I do want to get your take on Melanie Bennett's exclusive over at True North this week about how Europeans are now forced to denounce white European medicine, which is a height of irony here. It's like, hello, Canada practices Western medicine. Western medicine is based in large part on white European history and the history of medicine in the West, right? And so this idea that we are kind of going back on that, making nurses swear allegiance to woke ideology. And I mean, I can read from it. It's just as outrageous as you would imagine. Nurses are now required to acknowledge the historical and continuous impact that white European centric models of nursing and health have had on the perpetuation of anti Indigenous racism, anti Black racism, and other types of racism. Under the code, nurses must reflect on their professional power and privilege. And to structure their practice around anti-racism, allyship, and culturally safe care. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just so sick of this stuff. And it reads like satire to me. It's so silly and ridiculous. And yet, here it is, right? It's like this is somehow so mainstream in some Canadian circles that they feel comfortable imposing it on all nurses. I'm wondering if I get your thoughts on this. And also, as someone who has been a nurse, practicing nurse for over a decade, like, are these views commonly held by like the kind of rank and file nurses across the country, or is this something that's like very concentrated amongst like an elite few?
Yeah, well, I would start by saying I'm proud to say that in 13 years of nursing, up until I was fired this March by Vancouver Coastal Health, I have never seen a colleague racist towards a patient or another staff member. I've never seen racism in our healthcare system. So it's wild to hear this constant rhetoric from the Canadian Nurses Association or the College of Nurses, or even employers that are calling themselves systemically racist. Because I don't see it. And I also just wonder, if someone actually believes that they are working in a systemically racist system, that they are part of that system, then maybe you should leave the system, because just endlessly talking about it and making a new ethics code without actually offering any solutions or pointing out concrete examples of racism is not doing anything to solve the problem that you're claiming exists. It's very similar to a land acknowledgement, where you say that you're on stolen land, but you make no effort to give anything back to the people that you allegedly stole from. In terms of how many people believe in this stuff on the front lines, most people don't. It's a minority. I would, it's probably the same as you'd see in the regular Canadian population, where 80% or more of people think that it's ridiculous. But there's a huge culture of fear in speaking out within the health authorities, um, because people see what happens to someone like me who does speak out, and who, even while they're not at work. Even someone who speaks out in their own time in their private life and says, I disagree with gender ideology, or I disagree with progressive politics because of this or that, you will be targeted with a smear campaign. You can be subject to investigations. You can be fired. So I know that most nurses don't believe in this stuff, but nobody is going to be speaking out while we are still in this sort of cancel culture uh, arena that you described, where at large Canada seems to have changed and we're moving on from this, but in our institutions it's alive and well.
It's interesting how they're kind of the last ones clinging to power, and I will blame the CBC for a lot of that. But you had an interesting piece in the National Post last weekend where you said that Trudeau may be gone, but the gender craziness continues. And you note that unlike his predecessor, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Mark Carney isn't known for making flamboyant declarations of allyship. But don't be deceived, our national fealty to gender ideology continues the same as it was during the Trudeau years. Canada is no less woke under Carney. That's such an interesting observation because it kind of felt like, again, like it feels like we've moved on from that moment and that the pendulum has swung, and that you could tell during the election campaign, Mark Carney was really trying to tone down a lot of the woke stuff. And even his answer to Juno News's question about how many genders there are, right? Like he said two. Which I didn't expect that, but I applaud him for at least acknowledging reality. And yet, nothing has changed behind the scenes. And when June came around, it was still Pride season, and we still got the same stuff shoved down our throats. You had a couple of crazy examples that you talked about. Jonathan Yaniv, who I guess is now being known as Jessica Simpson, who became infamous for, what was he, suing estheticians for not waxing his male genitalia. He ended up losing those ones. Well, he's back now. He wants to participate in beauty pageants for little girls. And then you had a couple of other examples. So why don't you walk us through your thoughts?
Sure.
Well, it's funny, actually. I was just thinking like, oh, we might have to bleep part of this out for YouTube because they'll probably demonetize us if we're talking about it. I totally forgot that we usually put this behind a paywall. But like, it's true. Like this idea that you're assigned male at birth, like who uses those terms? Like the only time they ever use is for like a very small sliver of people who are deluded into thinking that they're part of the other sex. And otherwise, it's like, no, you're born one sex or the other, and that's how it's been for all of history and like everyone.
Yeah.
It's just, you're right. They purposefully try to confuse people, to like shame them out of like holding the views that everyone held in all of society up until like 5 minutes ago. I want to talk about the final story here with you, Amy, which is that it's Air Canada. I apologize to our friends over at WestJet. WestJet wouldn't do this, but Air Canada did. Air Canada removes passenger for wearing an anti-Trudeau shirt. It's an exclusive from Juno News. So a Nova Scotia man was removed from an Air Canada flight for wearing a T-shirt that featured an image of former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in blackface, which the cabin crew found to be offensive. So Daniel Grieve, 62, was sitting in a seat on a plane bound from Edmonton to Vancouver on July 8th, waiting for the aircraft to leave. When he was first notified of the problem regarding his clothing, the flight attendant told him that his T-shirt was not up to the airline's dress code. I'm sorry, has anyone flown recently? Like, since when do airlines have dress codes? Like, people are wearing their pajamas, people are wearing short shorts on the airplane. I sat next to a woman that I swear was just wearing a sports bra. Like, there's no dress code on airplanes anymore, right? And so this idea that you can't wear a shirt making fun of our foolish former prime minister, it goes with the theme of the show, Amy, which is that we don't really have free speech or free expression in Canada. What do you think?
No, that is wild. And it's true. Like decades ago, we used to, when we went on airplanes, we had to put on our dress shoes and a blazer and some dress pants. And you're right. Now people wear yoga attire, Lululemons, pajamas. So it's pretty funny that if they're selectively applying the dress code suddenly for this one T-shirt that happens to have Justin Trudeau wearing blackface. And it kind of just makes me wonder, what would they actually do? Let's say Justin Trudeau showed up for a flight in blackface. would they allow him on the flight? Who knows?
Well, it did seem like there was a different standard for Justin Trudeau than there was for like the whole rest of society because
Yeah.
Megyn Kelly got canceled from her show on NBC for just saying that she didn't find blackface particularly offensive. She got fired for that. And then, like, a few weeks later, Justin Trudeau was wearing it and no punishment for him. But it's funny how these standards are not applied evenly. And if you are conservative in any way, shape, or form, you'll bear a greater brunt of this. But it's one of those things that, again, like, just when you think that we have gotten away from the craziness of these speech codes and these, strict rules, like, people used to get kicked off flights for refusing to wear a mask, right? And it's like, what now? What, you get kicked off the flight for wearing a shirt that makes fun of a liberal? Like, you're not allowed to do that anymore. It's disappointing.
It is disappointing, and I laugh because that's, it's kind of a funny story, but ultimately it's not funny like any of these stories. It's deeply disturbing. I think that Canadians need to really think long and hard about what direction our country is headed in if more of us don't start taking our rights and freedom seriously and don't start standing up when we see these sorts of injustices playing out every day. It's easy to joke about it, but it really isn't a laughing matter when we consider what Canada might become if we don't stop this.
100%. Well, that is Amy Eileen Hamm. You can find her in the National Post, among other places. Amy, thank you so much for your time today and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm Candice Malcolm's Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you and God bless.